And if you do a research on the internet, you'll find that the subject of tolerance from a Christian perspective is often viewed as something negative. By other words, people say we should not be tolerant as Christians regarding sin. So that's a subject of this tolerance theme. But today I would like to give you another perspective, a biblical perspective of tolerance. And I would like to define, first of all, what tolerance is. And from a Christian perspective, tolerance is the understanding that all people are created in the image of God. Therefore, they have value, worth, and dignity. So tolerance begins with recognizing that. We may disagree on worldview as we see things, political disagreements. We may be from a different soccer team. We may be from a different social level, but we need to have this type of tolerance to reflect what Jesus wants us to reflect. In Matthew chapter 7, verses 1 and 2, Jesus said, "Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you." So this teaching about judgments gives us the theme for today, for tolerance. And when I'm speaking tolerance today, it's not to tolerate sin, but it's to have this attitude to one another where we do not judge, we do not pass judgment. And the Bible gives us extensive teaching on loving one another, praying for one another, encouraging one another, forgiving one another, showing hospitality to one another. Our world, I'm sorry, needs more tolerance and more forgiveness. As we navigate through life, we will see people from all realms, people that do not agree with us, people that have different opinions from us. And on the Amplified Bible, in Colossians 3:13, it says, "Bearing graciously with one another and willingly forgiving each other, if one has a cause for complaint against another, just as the Lord has forgiven you, so should you forgive." So if you receive forgiveness from God, you should pass that forgiveness in the same way to people around you. And that's what it means to be a Christian. Tolerance, in the sense of tolerating sin, it should not be allowed in our Christian life. But tolerance to other people's ideas, it's a must. Because Christianity is not a set of rules and regulations. It's a way of life. A Christian is not intolerant because we have the character of Christ. Think, what will Jesus do? You know, in those days of Jesus, Samaritans and Jews had so many differences that they didn't even talk to each other. And here's Jesus meeting a Samaritan woman and giving her not just words of comfort, but bringing her revelation, salvation, and everything changed from that encounter in the life of that woman and in the whole city where she lived. Why? Because Jesus showed a level of tolerance that people were not used to. And today it's politically correct to teach tolerance about everything. And the Christian is tolerant, but our tolerance is different. And they apply this to lifestyles, to sexual preferences, to different kinds of things. But the Christian is not intolerant. Intolerance is people who do not have a positive sense of self, or they have a low or damaged self-esteem. They feel insecure. Then the feeling of belonging to a group that they feel is superior or secure will help their sense of self-esteem. And they become intolerant and insensitive to the other group and act in ways that are far from the design integrity. but we should be, as Christians, a loving nation, a loving group. We should not be seen as intolerant. Otherwise, it's us versus them. We, the Christians, and them, everybody else, the pagans. But this is an attitude that's the cause of racism, sexism, and it's unhealthy. And we should avoid this at all costs. Otherwise, Christians will be labeled as right-wing, ethnic supremacy, white supremacists, or black supremacists, and their attitudes will be questioned. And nobody has greater power than God. And God is tolerant. He's tolerant towards us, towards you, and He has patience. You know, in Exodus 34, verse 6, it says that is the character of God's justice and God Himself that shows that He is slow to anger. He's slow to anger. Of course, we do not tolerate sin or sinfulness. Tolerance is not infinite. God's tolerance is not also something we can take for granted. And the church should tolerate, however, differences that are not taught in Scripture. You know, when church started, there was a big fight because there was the secular world, the Romans and the Christians, and there was tolerance, but the Romans could not understand why Christians wouldn't even offer a drop of wine, a toast, or say a few words to their divine emperor. And as Christians stand against idolatry, this was seen as a sign of disrespect for all gods. So Christians were considered atheists because they didn't believe in the Roman gods. And this was a major crime in Rome and caused all sorts of problems. And this type of intolerance followed humankind. You know, in Isaiah 5:20 it says, "Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter." Above all, let me tell you, we are tolerant because we are the salt of the earth. In Matthew 5:13, Jesus said, "You are the salt of the earth." But what good is salt if it has lost its flavor? Can you make it salty again? It will be thrown out and trampled underfoot as worthless. And you know, many times Christians are so arrogant, prideful, they persecute the very things we should be standing up for. Instead of being merciful, we're filled with judgment. And the Bible tells us clearly that we should not pass judgment to others. The salt of the earth, salt, you know, makes us thirsty. If you ever had snacks in a restaurant or in a bar, I don't go to bars, but I've been there, and they give these snacks with lots of salt, either it's chips, nuts, has to contain salt, and that salt is to cause consumption, and so people will buy drinks. And as Christians, as salt of the earth, people should be thirsty for God from our attitudes and from what you say. People look at you. Let me conclude by telling you this. In 1 Corinthians 9:24, Paul said, "Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize." So here he's addressing our spiritual life, saying that we are like runners in a competition. And the book of Hebrews also mentions this, saying in Hebrews 12:1, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses, like a crowd in a stadium, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us, and let us run with endurance the race that God has set before us." People are looking at you, they're looking at me. If we are intolerant in this world, we will be targeted as bigots, as all kinds of insults that the world today passes on. And we need to show tolerance. Our tolerance is different from this world, but we need to give a good testimony of Christ for those that are around us. So show tolerance. Let me just also share an aspect of society where we need to be tolerant. Nowadays, there's a fight between people that are vaccinated against COVID-19 and those that are unvaccinated. And in the Christian world, we see that there's a strong group of people that opposes vaccination. And I'm sure you have your reasons to do so. I'm sure also, if you have the other point of view, you have your reasons to be vaccinated. But in the world where people attack each other, as Christians, we need to see this as something that is not in the Bible. So there's no biblical mandate to be vaccinated or not to not be vaccinated. And since there's no mandate, we need to be tolerant. We need to show that tolerance, that respect that we need to have, so we will be the salt of this earth. This was my meditation on tolerance. I hope it benefited you. God bless you and have a great day.